So 2020 has been great, hasn't it? YouTube, we need to have a talk. Joining me for this video is CellSpex, who also does things on the internet. So this whole recent experience has been a lot, mentally and physically, for a lot of people, generally. I know it sucks, and everyone is just hoping this pandemic will wrap up soon. Unless you're watching this in the future, then surprise, you've survived, please share your secrets. In the wake of generally everything, there's been a concern I've noticed for who has influence. And what I mean by that is who do people go to get their opinions from? Who people trust to tell the truth, politically or otherwise? Who people just generally admire for being empathetic or a spokesperson for their corner of the internet? So this is mostly about YouTubers, but I guess it applies for Twitter and TikTok people. I still don't really understand TikTok. It's weird.
Hit or miss, I guess they never miss, huh?
We will say this a few times, but we know that we are all human and that we all screw up. But if you think that the internet is a garbage heap, some things to consider to help possibly make it less so.
So I just wanted to make a video addressing the inherent responsibilities of being an influencer and having people to influence opinions generally. Sometimes people who want to be any type of influencer are not aware that having followers can come with huge consequences. Let's see, your mental health, your friend circle, your family dynamic, your general sanity, etc. It's not all fun. And I get it, sometimes it can be fun to realize you might be making a difference to people.
Well, one thing that you don't train for, you don't know when you become an actor, is what to do if you become famous. There's no school for that. There's no class for that. You are met with, at one time, you can go to a store and nobody knows who you are, and you're treated on an even keel with everyone else. I'm no longer treated on an even keel with everyone else. What is that like?
Those people in high school didn't know what they were missing. But sometimes people don't have the sense of urgency or really understand what kind of toxic behavior they might uncover, or find out that they might be toxic themselves. It's much more stressful and less fun than I thought it would be beginning my YouTube career, or whatever you want to call it. I don't like being important compared to other people. I just make videos, it's fine. And the frank reality is it might not be for everyone. Sometimes when non-experts are put into situations where, for instance, they need to make a decision about what to do when there's a pedophile that might be in their circle, or in general having supportive and non-toxic behavior in order to be as supportive as we can be. I've made mistakes too, but I figured through some of my experiences, I've had to deal with some not fun, gross BS, then we can start discussing what kind of inherent responsibilities and traits go with having an audience, and why, in my opinion, you should be seeking fame for healthy reasons, like sharing opinions, right? Accountability. Whether you like it or not, people now hold you in a high moral standing. They respect you. Sometimes they want to be like you. Your confidence gives them confidence in liking, for say, the media they like. That being said, if anyone in your immediate circle does something that's black and white, morally questionable, then you seemingly have the responsibility to call it out and not condone that behavior for the sake of people hurt by this person. This is not solely about sexual misconduct. This is true for a lot of things, like gaslighting and other forms of harassment.
Many people hesitate in these situations because they are afraid that admittance will mean that they themselves or their fandom at large will then be proven guilty by association, even if they themselves didn't do anything. Look, at this point, we know that every fandom has its garbage people, but you gain nothing by defending or denying that these people exist. You only make you and your fandom look worse.
And I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but also, if you're gonna spill the tea or give your 2 cents on any kind of big issue, make sure you understand the issue in its entirety.
Siri, how do I kill ISIS?
Some of the people who scream into my empty void complain about issues based on their slim information that they might access on Twitter posts or something. That's not checking your credible sources, fam. You should also, ideally, be spreading factual information, because if not, you can create a mob mentality based on false information. And spoiler, this isn't fun for anyone. You have influence over people, and a certain amount of credibility. Please use it wisely.
And absolutely do not be ashamed to admit fault and correct yourself if you did get something wrong, because you will, because you're human. Plenty of adults, professionals, and even experts get things wrong all the time, but you gain credibility by the ability to check yourself. It makes you look like you are an evolving critical thinker and doesn't just react to things and sticks to your guns purely out of stubbornness. And not like you just react to things and then stick to your guns purely out of some image of yourself that you are flawless.
Ego. So let's start off by saying that true ego is a little bit harder to identify because I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but many types of personalities have to package themselves in a way that depends on their personality. Sometimes people use physical comedy, sometimes people downplay themselves or make fun of themselves in whatever content they are producing. But there's a difference between how someone presents themselves in their public persona versus how they really carry themselves.
There are a lot of people out there who advocate separating art from the artist, so they won't have to examine the ethics of consuming art from people who use their platform to do things that might be a little iffy. Maybe even harmful.
I've personally been accused of having an ego because sometimes I over-exaggerate my personality in my videos, and people sometimes don't get that as a joke. Additionally, if someone has a beef against a certain creator, and if they say a bad joke, then the audience member will get mad and have it be their responsibility to clarify that the thing wasn't a joke. I'm just incredibly blunt sometimes, but I usually use that to diffuse tension. But if someone doesn't get that, it might make me look like a jerk. There's a difference between that and someone's true personality.
I have the same problem. I use sarcasm literally all the time, often meaning for something to come off as lighthearted, but instead often comes off as dismissive, condescending, or just straight up negative. Still, the often common defense of nobody gets my sense of humor is a nigh constant debate depending on situation between audiences that genuinely might not get your sense of humor, or your own phrasing and tone that compromises some understanding of your meaning. Which is never gonna be perfectly clear because there will always be some people that will get you and some who will not. Depending on the situation, you may want to clarify, but is also perfectly valid to not engage if you feel like you have some genuine bad faith commenters that are determined to take your words out of context. Do not feed the trolls and all that, but if you feel you genuinely could have done a better job, own that. It certainly doesn't help that many online comedians' comedy essentially consists of saying slurs and promoting ideas that are so ridiculous that nobody should reasonably believe them. People should just be smart enough to know that I'm not serious.
The difference, I feel, is how much this whole internet fame thing is defining their true personality and how they measure their own success. This sometimes comes off when I'm doing personal appearances and I yell at people to buy stuff. Some people really react to that. They think it's funny. They think being blunt because I'm there to sell my art is funny and they engage with me. But other times people are offended that I'm so blunt with them and feel like I'm only there just to sell you something and I don't care that they came to say hi to me, or I devalue them because they're a fan and they don't want to buy things and they feel bad that they're not buying things. So I use that approach because it engages people. In reality, I'm there to sell my art, but, you know, if you're there to say hi and don't want to buy things, it's okay. Like, you know, not everyone has to buy things just because someone asked them or it's polite or, you know, you can avoid that kiosk at the mall that already gives you a hard time. Part of the reason people do those appearances in general is to interact with their fan base, and that doesn't include buying things. So come say hi next time you see me in 25 years when all this is over, and you can buy things. I appreciate when you buy things, but you also don't have to buy things, I promise. For example, Bobby Joe is just someone with a YouTube account. One day, Bobby Joe posts a video that gains some attention. Suddenly, Bobby Joe has an audience. He's responsible for influencing a lot of people suddenly. Now, this should not define Bobby Joe, but say if Bobby Joe's dad never loved him, or went out to get cigarettes that one time, now he suddenly has a tangible way to prove that he has validation by millions of people, or a lot of people. Should this influence how Bobby Joe acts? Should this new success define how he sees himself? The short answer is no, but sometimes it's not that easy when anyone needs or even has that validation. Now they are prone and addicted to growing their audience in an unhealthy way, and this can lead to hard problems that sometimes go bad with their platform. If something happens to Bobby Joe's YouTube account, then his sense of self is completely changed. He doesn't have that validation anymore.
It's always healthy to remember that the person on the other side of a video or a wall of text is a person. This might just be them on a bad day, or maybe they come from bad circumstances. But that does not mean that you are obliged to tolerate bad or abusive behavior. It's also true that if you're a viewer and have only seen one video of a creator, especially if it's an old video, that you may not know if this is what this person is like all the time or if they've changed since then.
You can usually tell what kind of people are influenced by this, by how they tweet or diffuse things, sometimes themselves, but in reality do a lot of stupid stuff to either defend their name or pretty obvious grabs for attention when presenting themselves in appearances. For example, if someone views me unfavorably, then they'll take what I say in a very bad context and use it as a way to define my personality to make themselves look better. And you gotta stop doing that, friend. For your entertainment, we've organized a real list of anonymous things that people have actually said to me in order to tell you how toxic things can be sometimes. So please enjoy this montage read in funny voices. Please enjoy, because I hate everything.
I don't like how you treat people. I don't like your attitude. I don't like how you handle yourself online. I've mentioned I'm not a fan of your intrusiveness and how you tend to be overbearing, that you don't give the answers that you're looking for. I don't like your denial. I don't like how you treat superiors and higher ups in the industry. I hate the way I've seen you treat fans. I don't like how you treated conventions that didn't give you what you wanted. You sent me footage, which was from a technical standpoint terrible. You filmed in front of a window when the sun was out and the audio was low. Now that wasn't the issue, although it did make me question your general knowledge of how cameras work. But when I said enough was enough, when I asked you if you could fix it, which any route you would have taken would have been fine, whether it was refilming or making the edits work, you instead told me that you'd get your team on it. I already knew that your team was busting their butts on your work free and that the last thing I would have ever wanted was to put more on their plate. So after that, I decided that it was enough. Admittedly, I never answered your question. My biggest reasoning for it was that I didn't want to make you feel bad. I didn't want to stir drama. I just didn't want this to become some sort of big problem. Yeah, you asked her to delete it and then she said, unfortunately no, it's been really nice to have this as a pseudo-security blanket. But like I said, I really don't want to do anything with it. It hasn't even hurt it nor wants to. We honestly just want this all to fade into nothing. And I mean what I said in there. I'm not trying to hurt you or bully you into silence. I don't want to be your enemy. You get enough of that from others.
This is a big one, am I right? Something that should be said is that, tying into the other point about accountability, is having and displaying a good understanding of emotional maturity. You know, because if you display enough toxic behavior, this behavior can indirectly advocate for other people to act in a similar manner because the person that they respect is acting entitled, or enabling others to act in a way that might be misogynistic at best, abusive at worst. This happens a lot when someone without a great deal of emotional maturity is caught having to defend themselves. They blame other people, or generally lack a sense of real responsibility. For the majority of people that have a social media presence who are over the age of 18 and should be able to hold themselves responsible for their actions, it's that easy.
I mean, we say that, and then we look at the news, and then we see plenty of so-called real adults, as in many of our public officials and news people, using these exact same tactics when dealing with opposition, criticism, and call-outs. Never apologizing, never admitting fault, constantly playing the victim, and being generally antagonistic in their vernacular. But of course, the general concept of merely sounding angry, context makes a big difference, whether you are actually attacking someone or you're genuinely standing up for injustice. Of course, there are the people that think they're doing one and they're really just doing the other. And of course, at some point we've all heard, it's not aggression, I'm just being passionate. Which, while we're there, attacking creators almost never called for. Still, the tactic of being loud and sounding angry, a definite proven stress reliever and makes people feel and sound confident. But even though it gives that impression, it definitely does not mean people are right or that they know what they're talking about. And yes, I include myself in that. I have opinions, but I am absolutely not an authority on anything. It is healthy to be at least minorly critical of everybody you listen to, even people that you trust, because everybody is flawed, and people who conduct themselves in this way will inspire their followers and their critics to act similarly. These people have now inspired a generation of people that this is the correct way to do things, because hey, it gets you views.
When you root your self-worth into external factors outside your control, it's a recipe for disaster, especially if something goes wrong. If you're not immune to making mistakes because you do something specific on the internet, not all criticism is just everyone's opinion. And most importantly, you are not the only person that matters. I get it, it's hard to know what all the social norms are and how society is developing, but stay with it, educate yourself. You can make mistakes, but just learn from them. Also, just keep in mind that confrontation is kind of part of the job. If you're afraid of confrontation, then being a YouTuber might not be the thing for you to do. Please keep that in mind. This was a big problem in the Doug Walker scandal a couple of years ago. I won't go into it because it is a lot and it's very bad. But essentially, Doug Walker himself wasn't exactly the bad guy, but under him, there was a lot of bad behavior going on and he wasn't advocating to stop it. When you're in that position, you have a responsibility to pass the information when someone is being mistreated on if you can. And if not, you look selfish, you look like you're an enabler yourself, and that's just not good for anyone. Please don't do that. Be a good person. This should be the most obvious one, right? Don't treat people badly. Don't seek fame for power. The usual stuff. But the sad reality is we have a bias against ourselves. It's hard to learn that you make mistakes just like everyone, and we want to see ourselves as the hero of our own stories. The internet tends to really overreact to less than favorable mistakes that creators make, but sometimes the way someone makes another feel bad is just important to consider. We have to face the reality that even if we try our best, something still might happen. That really haunts me as a creative each day. I hate it. I think that's why we have to hold the above in mind when being any type of influencer. Why do we do it? Why do we want to make it better? It's frustrating to see how internet fame can change people and alter their views of thinking. We have to be critical and open to feedback and how we construct ourselves, and how our actions can affect the people watching us.
Obviously, it depends somewhat on the type of content you make, but if you generally act in a way that does not consider the position or feelings of others, others will not be inspired to grant you the same. This absolutely does not mean that you should not stand your ground against blatant harassment and, Nazis and pedophiles, but if you find yourself in a space that has become increasingly toxic and unreasonable, at least consider if any of your own conduct has encouraged or permitted this atmosphere. And possibly not. This is the internet, where people are just terrible all over the place to others for the sake of expelling their own personal issues or stress. But in this age, how one copes with criticism or when they're caught in a mistake is the true test of one's character. Even if your YouTube persona is an exaggerated character, how one deals with the opposition is always telling.
I know, it sounds a little stupid to say, but being a YouTuber has been one of the best parts of my life so far, and I'm just tired of seeing how such negative and irresponsible behavior can play out. If you're considering being any type of influencer, please remember that you're setting an example for a lot of people across the board. You need to be careful with that kind of responsibility and search for doing good with it.
And yes, it's easy to write off all influence as everyone's responsible for their own behavior, to which is technically true, but in comparison to recent massive terrorist attacks and the phrase being tossed left and right, essentially to deny any responsibility for any indirect encouragement. And by encouragement, I mean perpetuating blatant lies that were the point of the attack. But even if I narrow this down to just our own community, a big part of media criticism is dissecting media messages, overt and subtle, because we believe that they matter and can influence people. If you believe that the power of something purely fictional can influence behavior, but somehow believe that your own behavior as a real live person somehow does not influence people in the way that they communicate, in the way that they treat others that disagree with them, there is not a big line of difference between people should just get that it's fiction and people should just get that I'm joking. But again, you will always have your critics. You will not reach or please everyone, and you do not need to bend over backward to please every single person you displease. Plus, the tendency to be overly critical of yourself is another struggle that many YouTubers have and can be its own black hole. We're not insisting people need to be completely self-deprecating, just self-conscious. It's difficult. It is, taking a hard look at yourself, especially when we look to the internet for escapism. But then, so is everyone else. Everyone is trying to make their lives easier, and the easiest way many choose to do this is by completely shielding themselves and taking it out on other people. And we've seen what kind of environment this has made. Yes, being a content creator is complicated and stressful if you care about it. It's why it doesn't work for everyone and why there's so much burnout. All you can do is try to be your best self while taking care of yourself.
For the future, I really want to be a leader in the cartoon community or the animation community, both having content that everyone can relate to, as well as incorporating people from the industry, providing a voice for fans from all types of animation media, as well as chatting and interacting with professionals to help bridge the gap between professional and amateur. I think fans should have more of a voice in their forms of cartoons, offering criticisms as well as direct interaction. That's what this is about. It's about being inspired by the stuff you love, and I really hope you'll follow me on this new journey as I try to get there, or not. So why I do this is simple. I love animation too much at times, but love to explore that passion in creative ways. If you'd like to learn more about techniques to make you aware of other people's own issues and the way to combat them, I recommend some TED Talks about emotional maturity, as well as learning about different types of coping mechanisms and abuse, so you can learn to foster a healthy environment for your fans and friends, and also make informed decisions to make sure you're fostering a safe environment. If you feel uncomfortable learning about these issues, feeling that all criticism is rooted in problems of the criticizer, or have a hard time addressing these issues directly, then maybe being a content creator isn't the right path for you. We don't really have it both ways, right? So if you're thinking about becoming a content creator, please keep this in mind to make sure you ideally make the world a better place with your newfound influence, because this stuff is important. And if you also want to learn about me, you can listen to our podcast, Animation Communication, because then I talk for long periods of time, so you don't think I'm a butt. So if you like this video, again, we're having a really bad problem with our analytics, holy crap. Please remember to like and subscribe and comment. Like, please leave a comment for the YouTube algorithm. I hate how this works, but I gotta say it. Please share this with a friend or 5, or like if you're in a Discord server, like put it in the Discord place and tell people I'm neat, or you know, whatever your real opinions are, it's fine. I probably won't see them anyway. So please share. I love you guys. Hope we make some really neat content in the future, and yeah. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching.
If you like what you saw, please remember to leave a comment and share this video with a friend or 2 or 5.
Click here to subscribe, we really appreciate it. Click here to check out the main collaborator for the video. Click here to check out our video playlist for this video, where you'll find similar videos that you might just like, hopefully. There's also a credit scroll here to check out all the other awesome contributors. All their info is in the description. That's all I gotta say. KP away!